Okay, welcome back. All right, so we have animated our walk cycle inside of the nested guy. So if I double click and go inside, you can see this is where the character's walk is taking place. Fairly little jaunty walk. And if I wanted to, I'd lock the layers. And then if I wanted to add like hair to my character, I would select the layer and add the head layer and add a layer above that and probably do keyframed hair. Or like when we animated the ball with the tail, we added a layer and drew a line and then keyframed the motion of the tail. So you could do that very same thing. I highly recommend that you do that. It really is very rewarding to see that secondary action with the follow through, and it gets you to practice the drag and all that kind of stuff. All right, so now the next part is animating the scene. This is super easy. You basically just decide how long you want your scene to be, and then animate it accordingly. So let's just drag this out and make it last a little while. Let's say 6 seconds to begin with. So I highlight every layer or every frame as a column, and then press F5 to stretch out the timeline. I don't want to do any animation just yet. So what stretching out the timeline means is you can see that now on this timeline, you'll see the actual animation of the walking character. And that's why we use graphic symbols, because if you nest graphic symbols inside of graphic symbols, they're all essentially tied to the main timeline. So as the main timeline runs, the other graphic symbols will run. That's why working out your timing in advance is really important. Like, is it going to be a 1 second cycle, a 2 second cycle? How long is this thing going to take? And you can adjust these things later, but for right now, just understand that this is why we use graphic symbols. Okay? So for 6 seconds, the character just walks. Well, I simply want the character to walk onto the stage. So let's say at the one from frame 0 for frame 1 to frame 24, so 1 second, F6. I'll change the position of my character and I'll have it walk onto stage. And then I want that character to stay walking in position for, let's say, 3 seconds. So at the 4 second mark, I'll add another keyframe. Okay. And then maybe I'll have it move forward just a little bit. F6. And then at the last frame, take off. So it starts off, walks over here, then jumps, moves over a little bit, and then flies off the stage. Okay. And so now all I need to do is tween, apply the classic tween. So highlight the layer, apply the classic tween. Okay, cool. Now, moving the sand layer, the hills layer, and the mountains is super easy because really it's one long tween for each layer. So at the very end of the timeline, add keyframes to each layer, unlock those layers, and move things a little bit. So I'm going to select the sand layer, and it's going to move the most. That's why it's the longest piece. Then I'm going to move the ground layer. So I just select it, and using my arrows, nudge it over. It's going to move a little bit. And then the mountains will hardly move at all. Okay, highlight the layers, shift click, select them all, right click, classic tween, cool. And that's it. That's your whole scene animated. Now it's basic. It's only got 4 elements in it. Your scenes, I hope, would have a few more elements in it. If you wanted to add a bird flying by, you could do that. You could create a bird flying cycle inside of a nested symbol and have it flying in the opposite direction and then tween it across the stage in this timeline. There's all kinds of things you can do. We can talk about that at the next Zoom meeting. Okay, so last thing to do would be to add a camera movement. So that's why everything's nested inside of a scene. Just like we nested the character inside of a walking symbol, we nested the scene inside of a scene symbol so that we could perform on a different timeline, a different animation that wouldn't interfere or make it difficult with this timeline. So what we do is we protect this timeline inside of a symbol. Then we can come to the scene, okay? And from here, as you can see, I get a brand new timeline. There's no activity here. So I know my whole scene is 6 seconds, so I'll just drag that out to 6 seconds. F5, and so you can see it plays. But you can also see I can now add a tween to this layer in order to get me a camera move. So I know that my character walks in and stops. So what I do is I can hold it here. Right? I can just hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it. Character walks in, and then let the audience see the character. And then F6 gives me a keyframe. And in this case, I want to do a zoom. So the easiest thing to do would be, let me zoom out just a little bit, is to scale my symbol up. Look at this. I just scale it up, reposition it a little bit so that my audience can see a little bit of a close-up of my character. Oops. And then I can tweak. But as you can see, it starts to zoom from the beginning. Okay? And I may not want that. Maybe I want to have it hold in place for a little bit, so I can Alt-drag a copy of this keyframe and hold it so that we get the walk in, then the tween up, then the scale up. But since the character isn't quite in frame, maybe I'll slide that down a little bit and make that transition slower. Okay. There we go. I had to fix one little thing there. And then it's just the same thing. Zoom it in, and zoom it out. F6 to zoom it back out again. Hold, hold, hold. F6. And then I might do another camera move, which is shift the scenery off. Or the other way, I should say. Okay. So it allows me to put 2 camera moves right there. So I compartmentalized the animation. I was able to do the walking nested inside the symbol, and then the scene animation, which could be more complex. You could add more layers to your scene. Like I said, you could have other things in there, a car drive by, a bird fly by, another character walking in the opposite direction, etc., etc., etc. And then on this layer, with everything embedded in the scene, I don't have to worry about how I'm going to add a camera movement. If everything's inside of a scene, then in the main timeline, I can come back and put in my camera. Okay, there you have it. I think that should cover everything that you need to do. I'm hoping that you're going to do your project a little bit more complex than me. But it's more about the structure and learning how to combine these things to get the results that you want. You'll get more sophisticated as you practice. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you in the next video.